In the last chapter of the book of Proverbs, we find an amazing description of a godly woman. The first thing said of her is, "Who can find a virtuous wife?" Sort of sounds like he's saying, there aren't that many of them around. They're hard to find. But then he goes on to say her worth is far above rubies. Such a lady is incredibly valuable, far more so than any precious gem. In other words, a virtuous woman, when you do find her, will be well worth the search. Next, he declares that the heart of her husband safely trusts her. We might suppose if we didn't read any further, this may be referring to a husband who trusts his wife to be faithful to him. And while I'm sure this certainly is a genuine dimension of a virtuous wife, sexual faithfulness is not what the author had in mind. He next states, so he will have no lack of gain. The trust described here that her husband has in her is a confidence that she will handle the financial affairs of the household wisely and will work diligently to see that the family prospers and lives comfortably. And for most of the verses that follow in this amazing declaration of God's view of a godly wife, the emphasis seems to be on hard work and careful organization of the family business more than anything else. One thing you cannot miss when you read this passage in Proverbs 31 is that this lady being described is an incredibly hard worker. Over and over and over, the point is driven home that a godly woman is a hard-working woman. She doesn't have a single ounce of laziness in her. We read such statements as, she seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She also rises while it's yet night and provides food for her household. I think this makes a valuable statement about the nature of the life God expects of us all, men and women. As important as prayer and Bible reading are in the life of the believer, we should not assume that if we were really spiritual people, we'd spend most of our days praying and reading the Bible and cut our ordinary work to a bare minimum. The truth is, men and women were made to work. 6 days thou shalt work, the commandment declares. Being devoted to Jesus Christ does not mean that we spend the vast majority of our time talking to Him and neglecting our responsibilities. If you look at some of the most effective and successful ministers in the history of the church, you find that they were nearly all incredibly hard workers. Certainly, they prayed and believed in prayer, but they did not spend all or even most of their time in prayer. They traveled, they preached, they wrote, they counseled, they organized outreaches, they mentored others, and they constantly sought new ways of reaching more and more people. Like the woman of Proverbs 31, they did not eat the bread of idleness. It's refreshing that in those days of patriarchal societies, this woman seems to operate in realms of authority that would traditionally belong to the men. The Scripture says of her, she considers a field and buys it. From her profits, she plants a vineyard. This woman is not merely confined to household duties, having babies, cleaning the house, and cooking. She is, in effect, a businesswoman, going out and purchasing fields and arranging for them to be planted, and then using some of the profits to create a vineyard. In addition to her amazing work ethic, there are 3 spiritual qualities said about this woman. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness, and she fears the Lord. Now, I realize this chapter could prove pretty intimidating to many women who feel utterly incapable of living up to this high standard. And apart from Jesus Christ, this would be true. But it is Jesus living in us who is the hope of glory and the hope of godly character for both men and women. In essence, this is Jesus bringing with Him into our lives His amazing character, His work ethic, His decency, His kindness, His great love and compassion, His gentleness, His uncompromising morality, and everything else that makes Him who He is. As we abide in Jesus and make Him the focus of our lives, He will manifest Himself through us. Virtuous women and virtuous men are the result, not due to their striving and vows to be better and nicer, but as a free gift given to all who believe and abide in Jesus.